Hello, welcome back to Indus News with me, Osman Lone. Now, Britain and the European Union have struck a new Brexit deal after intense negotiations between London and Brussels. The two sides have been working on the legal text of the deal, but it will still need the approval of both the UK and European parliaments. More in this report.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says Britain and the European Union have agreed a great new Brexit deal. Johnson tweeted that the Great New Deal takes back control. The UK Parliament is set to vote on Saturday on the revised withdrawal agreement brokered ahead of the October 31st Brexit deadline. President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, said, "Where there is a will, there is a deal."
You can be happy. I had the Prime Minister on the phone twice this morning and we concluded the deal. Well done.
The new agreement will keep Northern Ireland in the UK customs area, but tariffs will apply on goods crossing from mainland Britain to Northern Ireland if they are headed further to Ireland and the bloc's single market. European Council President Donald Tusk said the deal is a good one, but he preferred Britain to stay in the bloc.
Deal is always better than no deal, but I'm not happy because of the substance of this political fact. I mean, I am here, but I remain. But of course, the deal is much better than no deal.
The previous Brexit deal was thrice rejected by the British Parliament. The head of the main opposition Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, says Boris Johnson's Brexit deal is worse than former Prime Minister Theresa May's. He said the best way to get Brexit sorted is to give the people the final say in a public vote. The Northern Irish Party, the DUP, has also refused to support the deal.
Well, for more on this story, we have our correspondent from Brussels, Mia Alberti, joining us. Mia, thank you for joining us in Indus News. So tell us, what details you have right now regarding the new Brexit deal?
The Commission has said that now it will be up for the EU leaders in the Council summit that is just starting here in Brussels to approve this document. That will be the first hurdle this new deal will have to pass. But we have been seeing some positive signs from EU leaders. We saw French President Emmanuel Macron on Wednesday saying that if a deal was done by Thursday, which is the case, then the EU Council would be very positive in accepting the deal. So we are seeing a pathway from the EU to accept the deal as it stands. I think the biggest challenge for the deal is to be accepted by the British Parliament, and that debate is expected by Saturday in London.
Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier addressed a press conference earlier on and gave 4 points on this particular deal. Can you give us some details on those points and how they make this deal different from the one reached by former Prime Minister Theresa May?
The Commission has said that now it will be up for the EU leaders in the Council summit that is just starting here in Brussels to approve this document. That will be the first hurdle this new deal will have to pass. But we have been seeing some positive signs from EU leaders. We saw French President Emmanuel Macron on Wednesday saying that if a deal was done by Thursday, which is the case, then the EU Council would be very positive in accepting the deal. So we are seeing a pathway from the EU to accept the deal as it stands. I think the biggest challenge for the deal is to be accepted by the British Parliament, and that debate is expected by Saturday in London.
Mia, getting the UK Parliament's approval seems to be the biggest hurdle in getting this deal through. Parliament has already ejected 3 previous deals. What's the process of getting this particular deal approved by the UK and EU Parliament?
Well, what we are seeing is some UK leaders, especially from the DUP, the Northern Irish Party, saying that they might not be able to approve this deal. We saw that this was the biggest resistance this morning here in Brussels, that this party was not on board with the deal. It appears that Boris Johnson has talked to them, and it appears that they now agree with the agreement. But we will still have to wait until Saturday to see how they behave in Parliament. We are also hearing that the Labour Party MPs are being whipped, which means they are being advised to vote on a second referendum on Saturday. So it seems like their attention is not particularly on this new deal, but on trying to get another referendum. So, you know, as we have learned in the last few days and weeks, what seemed impossible, it's now real, so everything can happen with Brexit.
May Alberti, thank you very much for joining us on Indus News. Now, for more on this story, we've got London-based Brexit expert Patrick Sullivan. Patrick, thank you for joining me here on Indus News about our Brexit story. So, do you think that this deal is going to make its way through through the UK Parliament, considering the DUP, Labour and the Lib Dems have already written it off?
Well, firstly, the DUP is about 9 MPs. The Liberal Democrats are about 20 MPs. Actually, the fact that both extremes aren't for it means people in the middle, in the centre, your moderate Labour MPs, are likely to be for it. Another point I would like to raise is that when Tony Blair was Prime Minister, an academic called Philip Cowley did a study of the amount of rebellions against the party whip from various backbench MPs. On both parliaments, Jeremy Corbyn was the MP who rebelled against his party's whip the most, without a shadow of a doubt, and by a large margin. He does not control his parliamentary party. He might control the Labour grassroots, but the Labour grassroots don't have a vote here, and the Labour MPs do. And a number of them are in seats that voted Leave, and their voters will not forgive them if they scupper this final chance to get Brexit.
Well, Patrick, he's removed the whip from over 20 of his own party members, Boris Johnson that is, and now he doesn't even have a majority. So how's he going to do it?
Well, he's going to have those moderate Labour MPs. I mean, in actuality, he needed to remove the whip from those 21 in order to stop the bleeding to the Brexit party. Those 21 Conservative MPs were trying to scupper Brexit. What that's also done is it's meant that he's been able to crack the whip, as it were, harder on his other MPs, such as the European Research Group, because he said what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And people know that, unlike with Theresa May, when Boris Johnson says something, he means it.
Well, look, so tell me this now, Patrick. What makes this deal so special? Why have the EU agreed to this before and they didn't agree to Theresa May's one? Has Britain sold itself out too cheaply in Brexit?
Oh, not at all. I mean, basically, from an EU perspective, what Boris Johnson had to do was show that Britain was willing to walk away. The EU pretended like it had all the cards, when in fact it didn't. If you were to look at politics, let's not view it as the EU versus Britain. All politics is local or domestic. Angela Merkel did not want a no-deal Brexit. Why? Because a no-deal Brexit would have resulted in the fragile German economy tipping into recession. Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach Prime Minister of Ireland, is leading a minority coalition government. If there was no deal, Ireland would be the country that would suffer the most, and his coalition would collapse, and then you'd have a no-deal Brexit blame game. In addition to this, you've also got to see the issue of the boogeyman. So when Theresa May was negotiating, she said that Boris Johnson is the scary thing you don't want. But Boris Johnson's a sort of British oddity. Now, Nigel Farage, who runs the Brexit Party, is connected together with all these other national populist movements throughout Europe, tied by Steve Bannon. And what that means is that there is a linkage between what's going on domestically in countries such as Italy and countries such as France and their populist movements. If there'd been a no-deal Brexit Party would have most likely been the ultimate beneficiaries, and that would have infected politics across Europe. Also,
well,
in
Patrick,
regards to the Brexit,
sorry.
All right. Also, in regards to the Brexit Party, they have no power in the UK Parliament because they have no MPs and no peers. However, they do have a large degree of power in the European Parliament, where they are the largest single party, and they are allied to other parties, again, which are against the European project. What I believe the European Union would much rather have is Britain leaving with a deal and Nigel Farage and his group of MEPs leaving with Britain.
Patrick Sullivan, thank you very much. Patrick, thank you for that. We've run out of time, but thank you so much for your analysis. on Brexit there. That was Sullivan joining us in London. Now, US Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo have reached Ankara seeking a ceasefire from Turkey in northeastern Syria. The high-level US delegation also includes National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. Pompeo said he's positive about the prospects of a deal to halt the ongoing Turkish military operation. This will be the first major meeting between the two countries since President Donald Trump pulled US troops from Syria. US Senator Michael McCaul says he will introduce more sanctions on Turkey for its military operation into Syria today. Earlier, Ankara said it's preparing retaliatory sanctions against the United States. Well, in a related development, the US Congress has voted overwhelmingly to condemn President Donald Trump's withdrawal of American forces from northeastern Syria. The Democrats and Republicans banded together to approve a non-binding resolution by 354 votes to 60. The resolution states Congress opposition to the troop pullback, saying Turkey should cease its military action in Syria. One of President Trump's closest allies, Senator Lindsey Graham, said Trump's decision will allow ISIS to re-emerge. Meanwhile, US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said Democratic leaders cut a meeting with the president short, saying Trump had a meltdown over the vote. Pelosi said the president did not expect the votes to have such a margin.
I think that vote, the size of the vote, more than 2-to-1 of the Republicans voted to oppose what the president did, probably got to the president because he was shaken up by it. And that's why we couldn't continue in the meeting, because he was just not relating to the reality of it.
Well, the White House has made US President Donald Trump's letter to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan public. The White House said the letter rejects allegation that Trump green-lighted Turkey's operation in northeastern Syria. The letter was sent to Mr. Erdogan on the 9th of October and shows President Trump tried to persuade him to reverse his decision to invade Syria. Trump told Erdogan that he would not want to be held responsible for slaughtering thousands of people. In the letter, Trump said he didn't want to destroy the Turkish economy with sanctions unless Ankara forced his hand. Trump said he wanted American troops out of harm's way.
Make a statement like that is so deceptive. Just the opposite of a green light. First of all, we had virtually no soldiers there. They were mostly gone. Just a tiny little group. And they would have been in harm's way. You have a massive army on the other side of the border. But more importantly, I didn't give them a green light. And if anybody saw the letter, which can be released very easily if you'd like, I could certainly release it. But I wrote a letter right after that conversation, a very powerful letter. There was never given a green light. They've been wanting to do that for years. And frankly, they've been fighting for many, many years.
Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Hello and welcome back to Indus News. Now, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says India's hegemonic designs are a threat to regional stability. Speaking in Islamabad, he said India resorts to warmongering and issues nuclear threats for short-term domestic gains. He said New Delhi refused to engage in bilateral talks and rejected proposals to reduce conflict risk. Qureshi said this is Pakistan's desires peace and strategic stability so it can focus on its socio-economic development agenda. The foreign minister said Islamabad's conduct continues to be defined by restraint and responsibility. Pakistan's envoy to the UN, Malia Lodi, has said a peaceful resolution to the Kashmir issue is essential for stability in South Asia. She was addressing the UN General Assembly's First Committee and said India's unilateral aggression is a direct threat to the region, especially Pakistan. The Pakistani representative said occupied Kashmir's illegal annexation violates UNSC resolutions and poses a grave risk to regional peace. She said Pakistan has always tried to avoid an arms race in South Asia. Lodi said Islamabad cannot remain oblivious to the evolving security dynamics in our immediate neighborhood. Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammed Faisal says India's aggressive seizure of the subcontinent's water resources is unacceptable. The statement was given in response to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's threat to block rivers flowing into Pakistan. In the weekly briefing, Faisal said Pakistan has an exclusive right over 3 western rivers under the Indus Water Treaty. He said any step to deviate or stop waters from these rivers will be considered an act of aggression. Faisal said Islamabad has the full right to respond to any Indian offence. Sudan has announced a permanent ceasefire in the country's war zones, but a key rebel group has refused to comply, accusing Khartoum of bombing their territory amid government-led peace talks in Juba. The South Sudanese city of Juba is holding talks between new Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok's government and rebel groups. Peace talks are being held in the presence of heads of state from Ethiopia, Egypt, Rwanda, Uganda and South Sudan. In a statement, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement said government forces attacked the South Kordofan region. It also accused the government of supporting the Arab Hawazma tribe against other tribes in the area. Responding to the statement, Sudan's government said it has called for an immediate halt to fighting around the country. Now, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are visiting Pakistan's eastern city of Lahore. Prince William and Kate Middleton visited the SOS Children's Village. The royal couple also went to National Cricket Academy based here in Lahore, where they played with Pakistan's cricket stars. After playing some cricket, the couple visited the iconic Badshahi Mosque and participated in a discussion with religious leaders on interfaith harmony. The couple will also visit Shaukat Khana Memorial Cancer Hospital, and William's late mother, Lady Diana, also helped in raising funds for the hospital in the 1990s. "35 pilgrims have been killed and 4 others injured in a traffic accident in Saudi Arabia's holy city of Medina. Police officials said the victims were mainly of Asian and Arab origin. The accident happened after a passenger bus crashed into a heavy vehicle. Saudi state media reports that the injured have been transferred to Al-Hamna Hospital in Medina. Only 15% of Madagascar's 26 million inhabitants have access to electricity. This is a statistic that hasn't changed in 8 years and is unlikely to change for a long time because of corruption, mismanagement and politics. More in this report. Much of Madagascar's national energy mix still depends on crumbling colonial-era power plants. It's no wonder then that the World Bank ranks it 184 out of 190 countries in terms of access to electricity. But Madagascar's political leaders still shy away from costly construction projects which may drag on beyond their own 5-year term. The country is also rife with power theft, which overloads the dilapidated electrical infrastructure.
People connect wherever they want without permission, and the transformers can't take the overload. An installation can only hold 3 amps, for example, and there are people doing welding, using hair appliances and other higher voltage devices. Cables from their homes can overheat and burn.
Even those with access to electricity say they suffer frequent blackouts.
When I used to buy electricity from the power company, whenever we watch TV, it would always cut out when it got interesting. Whereas since we have been using solar panels, we can all use our devices easily.
Now the private sector is stepping in with a 120 megawatt hydroelectric power project. The country also gets 2,800 hours of sunlight annually, and the government is relying on it to provide solar power to 70% of Madagascar's citizens by the year 2030. But for that, they'll have to put the project before their own political concerns. Now in business news, Pakistan and Egypt have agreed to work out measures to tap into the two countries' economic potential and promote bilateral trade. The decision was taken at the first meeting of the Pakistan-Egypt Joint Working Group on Trade held in the capital. The two countries agreed to enhance trade in sectors including textiles, agriculture, surgical instruments and leather products. An MOU was also signed between the Trade Development Authority of Pakistan and the Egyptian Commercial Service. The Pakistani delegation was led by Secretary of Commerce Ahmed Sukera, while First Under-Secretary of Egyptian Commercial Service Ahmed Antar represented Egypt. The IMF says rising debt levels in Africa pose an increasing risk to the region's economies. IMF Capital Markets representative Evan Paparazou said over a dozen countries are either in distress or at high risk of debt distress. Paparazou said in a lot of low-income countries the issue of debt is becoming more pressing. He said major lending countries out of Europe have become the dominant source of official bilateral credit for many low-income countries. Those creditors should consider the benefits of adopting sustainable lending rules. The IMF also predicted that the Russian federal budget will be in deficit again in 2020. Well, it's 26 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore, but we'll be back at the top of the hour with the headlines. Thank you for watching and bye-bye.